Words from Daddy's Mouth by Lily Burgess. Book 3, The Weekend Cash Call. Do you know how I used to make money when I was growing up in the 1980s? Asked Dad. You used to mow lawns, said Stephanie, remembering Dad's stories. Yes, said Dad. The other thing I did was to try to win things from the radio, so I would still get new things without having to work as much. Radios are so old school, sighed Stephanie. When I was growing up in the 1980s, the radio was important because we didn't have iPods or music streaming, or even CDs. Some people had record players which were really big boxes that you put pieces of black plastic about the size of a dinner plate on, and then they spun around to play music. Other people had cassettes which were about the size of an iPhone and had 2 holes in the middle that allowed for spinning wheels to sit inside them. Those wheels spun around and pulled a piece of tape through the cassette, and the cassette player played music. Were cassette tapes what you used when you wanted to play a game on Jeremy Tobin's Commodore 64, Dad? Asked Jasmine, remembering the terrible Red Racer story. Yes, that is exactly what we had to use. Our family didn't have a cassette player for many years. We had one record player that your Gramps, my dad, owned. Later, we bought a cassette player, but for a very long time we had just one cassette player for the whole family. Eventually, I saved up enough money to buy a cassette player that also had a radio with it. It was very modern at the time, Dad said. Was that called a boom box? Asked Stephanie. Dad laughed. This was even before boom boxes. The sound quality from my cassette player was terrible compared to speakers nowadays, and even though it also had a radio, often it was impossible to pick up any radio stations. When I was growing up, there were only 2 radio stations that I could listen to. One was run by the government, and it only had people talking about current news events. Boring, interrupted Stephanie. Exactly, said Dad, grinning. The cool people listened to the other station called 2CC. Were you a cool person, Dad? Asked Jasmine. Absolutely, grinned Dad. I think that is a matter of personal opinion, Jasmine, said Mum. Ignoring her, Dad went on. 2CC had shows like the Top 8 at 8, where you could phone in and vote for your favourite song that day, and then all the votes got added up and the DJ played the 8 highest scoring songs at 8 p.m. Dad, the radio stations still do that, added Stephanie. There was another DJ who ran a show that was on every Sunday afternoon called Take 40 Australia. This show played the top 40 songs according to the records that had been sold across Australia in the previous week. That show is still on too, said Stephanie impatiently. That's right, said Dad. I used to listen to 2CC every morning before I went to school, and then every afternoon as soon as I got home, while I did my homework until just before I went to bed. I used to try to win the competitions that were run on the radio. In fact, in 1985, there was a competition called the Weekend Cash Call. The Weekend Cash Call competition was by far the most valuable and exciting competition that I ever tried to win, Dad explained. Mum rolled her eyes. What do you mean, Dad? How many competitions did you win? Asked Jasmine. Over the years, I must have won about 30 different competitions, announced Dad proudly. Wow, said Avie. Did you ever win any Barbie dolls? Dad laughed. No, I didn't win any Barbie dolls. The first thing I ever won was a vinyl record by a musician named Bruce Springsteen. Is he still around? Said Stephanie. Yes, he is still quite famous. At the time I won the record, around 1982, I was about 10, and he was not particularly popular. Often with the competitions that I won, it was usually for things that other people didn't want to win. To win a competition, you needed to be the first person to call the radio station. I listened to the radio a lot, which meant I was able to work out when a DJ would tell people to phone in. A lot of the DJs would play a song at about 35 minutes past the hour, and as soon as that song finished, they would ask people to phone in. I would set myself up in the kitchen right next to where the phone was and where Mum or Dad were working. Then I would listen from half past the hour and start dialing the phone over and over again towards the end of the song. This was very hard work because I didn't have an alarm clock or anything to remind me to go and sit in the kitchen. Also, we only had one phone, and it was plugged into the wall. "Plugged into the wall?" quizzed Jasmine, trying to imagine this. Dad nodded. Not just plugged into a wall, but the handset was joined to the phone as well. The phone had a big dial on it. You had to put your finger into a little hole above each number and then spin the dial forward. Jasmine scrunched her nose again. I would try to make the phone work as fast as possible to be the first caller. My world record for dialing the phone number to 2cc was about 12 seconds. Jasmine's eyes widened. "That is so slow. So last century," said Stephanie. "Technology has given you great opportunities that weren't available when Mum and Dad were your age," Mum said. "Exactly," Dad nodded. "There was no speed dial back in the 80s. But my speedy dialing did pay off, as that year I won records by Bruce Springsteen, Mick Jagger, John Farnham and Mondo Rock. I won the exact same record by Bruce Springsteen 3 times. A few years later, I won an album by a band named the Cockroaches, and they eventually became the Wiggles." "Wow!" screamed Avie. "Why did they allow you to win so many times, Dad?" asked Jasmine, giggling at the thought of Dad carrying lots of big records. Seeing I was really good at winning, my friends asked if I could call up for them. "Wow, Dad, no wonder you thought you were cool," said Jasmine. "Yes, I was popular," said Dad, while Mum chuckled, then added, "Again, that is your personal opinion, Matthew." The downside was I had to pick up the records from the radio station, which was about an hour drive from where I lived. Another time when I was in Year 7, I would have been about 13 years old. I won about 10 double passes to a movie premiere and ended up taking half my class to the movies. The DJ was there, and he said to one of the ushers in the movie theatre, "Isn't it great that so many of these kids know each other?" "What was the movie, Dad?" asked Jasmine. The movie was called La Bamba. It was about some famous musicians from the 1950s, even though we watched it in the 1980s. It was a bit sad. The 1950s was old school when my mum and Dad, your Nanny and Poppy, were growing up, Mum explained. "Exactly," said Dad. "What else did you win, Dad?" Jasmine asked enthusiastically. "I first met your mum when I was 19 years old, and when she came to visit, I had just won a prize from a radio station. It was a T-shirt, CD and record set by a band named Midnight Oil. The radio station delivered the prize to my house in a big black 4-wheel drive vehicle, which was called a Black Thunder." Mum's friend was super impressed, but Mum just rolled her eyes and said, "Whatever." I can still remember how disappointed I was that your mum was so unimpressed. Mum laughed. "I can see Dad has his own version of these events. It's not what I remember, girls. I was just too nervous to say anything." At 22 years old, I won 9 CDs from a radio competition called Beat the Music, Dad continued. That was pretty cool, because I could choose the CDs that I wanted. Then another time, I must have been about 24, I won a brand new release CD by another olden days band named The Beatles. When I won the competition, the DJ started talking to me on radio about how he had played the CD so loud in his car that the lighting in the roof fell out. I told the DJ that I wouldn't have that problem in my car because the lining in the roof had already fallen out. Mum laughed, remembering this. That car ended up at the wrecking yard. The coolest prize I ever won from the radio was during a competition that Coca-Cola sponsored. I was 12 years old at the time. I won a Coca-Cola t-shirt, 24 cans of Coca-Cola, and a Coca-Cola bottle that was a real telephone. Those Coca-Cola phones are now a collector's item on eBay, said Dad. Unfortunately, I gave mine away. Sorry, girls. Ah, sighed the girls. More recently, I won some CDs from the radio. At the time I was winning them, you girls were standing right beside me, but you thought that I was just talking to Mum on the telephone. When the DJ replayed the interview with me, I turned the radio up really loud, and you ran around the house screaming, Mum! Mum! Dad's on the real radio! Another time I called the radio just to talk to the DJ about Nick Cave. Who is Nick Cave? Asked Jasmine. Nick Cave is one of the world's greatest ever performers, and your mum and I have both met him. We can Wikipedia him later, said Dad. You met him in real life? Asked Jasmine. In real life, said Dad in a hushed voice. Oh, sighed Jasmine. What else did you win, Dad? Asked Avie, wanting to get back to the story. I regularly won tickets to go and see live concerts, said Dad. The Wiggles? Yelled Avie excitedly. No, sorry, Avie, no Wiggles. Ah, Avie moaned. Often I would win tickets just a day or two before the concert was on. When I was about 18 years old, I won tickets to see a band called The Angels. Did they play fairy songs? Asked Jasmine. Not really, laughed Dad. They were a very loud, very alternate band. While I thought they were okay, I didn't want to go to the concert as I had an exam the next day. I decided to drive my car to the concert and arrive about an hour before the show started. I thought that the show would be sold out, so I could sell the tickets for more than the standard price to someone who was keen to go, Dad explained, his eyes gleaming. Unfortunately, the show had not sold out, and most of the people interested in going looked like they had just walked off a horror movie set. Everyone seemed to be wearing black leather clothes and had crazy hairstyles, big tattoos, earrings, and chains. In 1992, dressing like that wasn't common like it is now. The first person I tried to sell the tickets to yelled, "Get lost, kid! Go find your mummy!" The next few people ignored me. By now there was only 10 minutes to go before the show was to start. I ended up selling the tickets to a fellow for 50% less than the standard price because I was desperate to just get back in my car and drive home to my mummy, Dad said, laughing with the girls. What was the weirdest thing you ever won, Dad? Asked Jasmine. The weirdest thing? Said Dad, pausing to think. The weirdest thing was when I was 15 years old. The competition was called the Spring Clean. I think the radio station must have been running out of money and ideas because they advertised that their prize cupboard was overflowing and they were putting together huge gift packs for competition winners. They never disclosed what items were in the gift packs, but I decided I wanted to win one anyway, and I did. When I got the pack, all of it was in a plastic bag. It was junk. There were coffee mugs with the handles broken off, paper hats that had been water damaged, and white t-shirts that were so old they had started to go yellow. Yuck! Screamed Jasmine. What did you do with all of that? I took it to school and handed it out to some of the kids there. Dad, that's not very nice, said Stephanie, crossing her arms. Anyway, my disappointment at getting that prize was nothing compared to the day when I was about 8 years old and I lost the 2cc weekend cash call, Dad said, closing his eyes and pausing to remember the call. After several seconds, Mum nudged him to continue the story. Okay, said Dad. Where was I again? You were about to explain how the weekend cash call competition worked, said Stephanie, putting Dad back on track. Okay. The cash call competition was on every day over the summer. During the week, it was named the cash call, and on the weekend, it was named the weekend cash call, said the girls. Yes. What would happen was the DJ would announce an exact amount of money. For example, $482.25, just before the news each hour. Then, sometime during the next hour, the DJ would choose a phone number at random from the phone book and phone that number. If the person who answered the phone call could confirm the exact amount, then they won the money. If the person didn't know, then the DJ would help them out by telling them the dollar amount, and the person would only have to guess the cents. In other words, they would have a 1 in 100 chance of winning the money. If they got it wrong, then they would get a $2 scratcher ticket. This competition had been running all summer. I had been writing down every hour and every day the exact cash call amount. I had also been making sure I was at home at all times during the day in case we were called. This had been going on for 6 weeks, and not once did our phone ring. No one I knew had been phoned by the radio station. Then one day at about 3 p.m. on a Saturday, my mum came in and said, "Matthew, this radio station is never going to phone you. You have been inside the house all summer. You are to turn the radio off now and go outside and play." I said to my mum that I just wanted to wait for 10 more minutes and get the next cash call amount and write it down, but after that I would go out to play and I would leave the piece of paper with her in case our house was called. Gran looked me in the eyes and said, "Outside now, Matthew, move it." So guess what I did? "Exactly as your mother told you, Dad?" asked Stephanie. "Exactly," grinned Dad, looking over at Mum. "Exactly," repeated Mum. "And guess what happened next?" asked Dad. "What?" asked Jasmine. "The phone rang. It was the radio station," said Dad. "Outrageous!" screeched Stephanie while jumping off her seat. "Totally unbelievable," said Dad. Mum rolled her eyes again. "Matthew, are you sure about this chain of events?" "Of course I am. I had gone to play down near Jeremy Tobin's house, and your Gran asked the DJ if they would mind holding for a moment. Gran put the phone on the bench and ran all the way there to get me. She was puffing when she got to me and said, 'The radio man is on the phone.' I said, 'Oh my goodness!' Jasmine shrieked with laughter. Gran's favourite saying. Then we both ran all the way home again. The DJ had to wait at least 10 minutes for us to get back to the phone. I was out of breath when I picked up the phone. Then the DJ asked me if I knew the cash call amount. I said no, but I had been listening last hour. The DJ said that because I had been listening, instead of me needing to guess a number somewhere between 1 and 100, he would allow me to just guess an amount in a 10-cent bracket, somewhere between 40 cents and 50 cents. He told me the dollar amount was $622. It would have taken me about 10 years of mowing lawns to earn that amount. It was more money than I had ever dreamed of having, and I had a 1 in 10 chance of winning it. I have a copy of the call on a cassette tape if you want to listen. Everyone screamed, "Yes!" "Matthew, you'll need to bring the tape and cassette player in to do that," said Mum. "Yes, and I know exactly where everything is," Dad responded, and within a few minutes he had set up the cassette tape and started to play it. "Lucky that thing still works, Dad," said Stephanie. "Quiet, Stephanie, we want to listen," said Jasmine. "Hi, is this the Burgess household?" "That's right." "Mrs. Burgess, is it?" "Yes." "It's Mike Hammond calling with an official 2cc weekend cash call." "Oh!" "Do you know the amount for this hour? And there's a lot of money too." Look, can I get my son?" "Okay, quick. Go on to get the son. May well be we have a winner here. Let's see what happens, huh? Come on, son. Just on the sly, the amount is $622.44. Let's see if they get it. The Burgess household in Flynn. Will we have a winner? Hi, who's that? Matthew. But Dad, Stephanie interrupted, and Dad hit the pause button. How come you were so quick coming back? I thought you said it took you at least 10 minutes. The radio station edited that bit out. Now listen, here's the best part. Matthew, do you know the cash call amount for this hour? I wasn't listening. I have the last hour. Matthew, you know what? You're going to kill yourself. It's a lot of money. Oh, look, it's $622 and some cents. Now, if you can guess the cents, you'll win all that money for yourself and your family. You should have been listening. Look, here we go. I'll tell you. It's $622 and you guess the cents. It's between 40 and, because you were listening last hour, between 40 and 50 cents. How much do you think it is? Oh, how much, Mum? Quick. Between 40 and 50. 42? 42? Oh, Matthew, guess what? What? It was 44 cents. Oh. Look, you should have been listening. Listen, Matt, what we'll do is we'll send you and your family out an instant lottery ticket. You never know, you could win thousands of bucks with that. Oh, thanks. Thanks for playing the 2cc Weekend Cash Call. Bye. So my chance of retiring at the age of 8 was completely lost, and I did not even win anything on the $2 scratch-it ticket that came in the post a couple of weeks later. What you won't hear is what your gran said when I told her that I lost by 2 cents. But I bet you can guess, though. Oh, my goodness! Screamed the girls as they fell down laughing.